Saint Padre Pio, who was born with the name Francesco Forgione, was a child of Grazio Mario and Maria Giuseppa Forgione. He was born in the small town of Pietrelcina, Italy, on May 25, in 1887. He had an older brother, Michele, and three younger sisters, Felicita, Pellegrina, and Grazia, who became a bridge teen nun. His parents had two other children who died in infancy. Although the Forgiones were poor in material goods, they were certainly rich in their faith life and in the love of God. At the age of 5, he dedicated his life to God. As a young boy, he was able to see and communicate with, not only his guardian angel but also with Jesus and the Virgin Mary. Francesco thought everyone had the same experiences. When Francesco was 15 years old, he was admitted to the novitiate of the Capuchin Order of the Friars Minor in Morcone, Italy. On August 10, in 1910, at the age of 23, Padre Pio was ordained to the priesthood. Due to the long pauses of contemplative silence into which he entered at various parts of the Holy Sacrifice, his Mass could sometimes last several hours. His parishioners were deeply impressed by his holiness and they began to come to him, seeking his counsel. As the years passed, pilgrims began to come to him by the thousands, from every corner of the world, drawn by his spiritual graces. To his spiritual children he would say, "It seems to me as if Jesus has no other concern but the sanctification of your soul." He prayed almost continuously. He loved to pray the rosary and recommended it to others. He used to say, "We must empty purgatory with our prayers." Padre Pio suffered from poor health his entire life. After his ordination to the priesthood, he remained in his hometown of Pietrelcina. He offered all of his bodily sufferings to God as a sacrifice, for the conversion of souls. Shortly after his ordination, he wrote a letter to his spiritual director, Father Benedetto Nardella, in which he asked permission to offer his life as a victim for sinners. The marks of the stigmata, the wounds of Christ, appeared on Padre Pio's body, on Friday, September 20th, in 1918, while he was praying before a crucifix and making his thanksgiving after Mass. He was 31 years old and became the first priest with stigmata in the history of the Church. He bore the painful wounds in his hands, feet, and side for 50 years. Padre Pio's extraordinary spiritual gifts and charisms included the gift of healing, bilocation, prophecy, miracles, discernment of spirits, the ability to abstain beyond man's natural powers from both sleep and nourishment, the ability to read hearts, the gift of tongues, the ability to speak and understand languages that he had never studied, the gift of conversions, the grace to see angelic beings in form, and the fragrance which emanated from his wounds and which frequently announced his invisible presence. His day began at 2:30 a.m. when he would rise to begin his prayers and to make his preparation for Mass. He was able to carry on a busy apostolate with only a few hours of sleep each night and an amount of food that was very small. Between Mass and confessions, his workday lasted 19 hours. He very rarely left the monastery and never took even a day's vacation from his schedule in 51 years. He never read a newspaper or listened to the radio. He cautioned his spiritual children against watching television. In his lifetime, Padre Pio reconciled thousands of men and women back to their faith. He gave a new spirit to hospitals by founding one which he called the Home for the Relief of Suffering. He saw the image of Christ in the poor, the suffering, and the sick. He once said, "Bring God to all those who are sick. This will help them more than any other remedy." He died on September 23, in 1968 at the age of 81. He died as he had lived, with his rosary in his hands. His last words were Jesus, Mary, which he repeated over and over until he breathed his last. He had often declared, "After my death I will do more. My real mission will begin after my death." In one of the largest liturgies in the Vatican's history, Pope John Paul II canonized Padre Pio on June 16, 2002. Drawing approximately 8 million pilgrims each year, San Giovanni Rotondo, where St. Pio lived and is now buried, is second highest in its number of annual visitors. Padre Pio's body has been incorrupt for over 50 years. His feast day is celebrated on September 23. St. Pio is the patron saint of adolescents, civil defense volunteers, stress relief in Italy. Please subscribe to Catholic News World's YouTube channel. Thanks and God bless.